One of the many terrible things about war is the toll it takes on families. Children are separated from their loved ones, dropped into the arms of the state, and sent off to some far-flung corner of the world, leaving those at home praying every day for their safe return. It's in these trying times that something as simple as a letter becomes precious, eagerly awaited by those at home and abroad. These particular letters are no exception. They were written by two brothers who refused to remain separated by a world at war. And today, I'd like to tell you their story. Richard Walter Lee was born on April 15, 1922 in Newark, New Jersey. His brother Donald followed a few years later on December 3, 1924. By 1930, the family had moved to Quincy, Massachusetts, where their father Walter had found work for a local freight company. Richard and Donald spent most of their childhoods in this two-family home at 148 Elmwood Avenue, and both boys attended Quincy High School. Automobiles seemed to be an early interest for Richard, and by the time he enlisted in the Army Air Corps on October 5, 1942, he was employed as a mechanic for Ray's Checker Cab in Quincy. Donald was also working in Quincy as an electrician at the Fore River Shipyard, and he followed his older brother into the service sometime in 1942. Both were assigned to the 8th Air Force, and by late 1943 they were stationed near each other in the English countryside. Sergeant Richard Lee was assigned to the 6th Aero Repair Section as a B-17 engine specialist, while Corporal Donald Lee flew missions as a B-17 waist gunner for the 384th Bomb Group out of Grafton Underwood Airfield in Northamptonshire. Donald was assigned to 2nd Lieutenant Clifton Orville Moore's crew, and he flew his first mission on December 1, 1943. They were given a B-17G called Lady Drew, and their target was a non-ferrous metal plant in Solingen, Germany. Lady Drew took off from Grafton Underwood and formed up with the Low Squadron in a heavy layer of clouds. Soon ice began to form on the wings, and once the plane entered prop wash, it stalled, dropping 300 feet before 2nd Lieutenant Moore and his co-pilot, Gilman Stewart, were able to regain control. After such a close call, the decision was made to abort the mission, and Lady Drew returned to Grafton Underwood. Just a few days later, on December 4, 1943, Richard wrote home to his parents. Dear Mom and Dad, I have one letter from each of you that I'm going to attempt to answer. Today, according to the numbers, I've received all your mail, Mom, but one of Dad's is missing. You mentioned Don's bike, Dad. He has new tires, but was fixing to replace a tube while I was there. His latest letter mentioned that he has it all repaired now and has 3 pedestrians to his credit already. Are you all over the gripe now, Dad? John and I had a touch of flu, but we nursed it along and are in ship shape again. There's a lot of flu and gripe around here, and we gotta be careful of large crowds. Glad to hear the furnace is all fixed. Maybe you won't burn so much coal now? You said you're allowed only 2 tons? If I remember right, we've been using 3 tons. You'll have to skimp this winter, eh? I'm waiting for that lighter eagerly. I sure need one. Matches aren't any too plentiful here. I know Don can use one too. I think according to your description it's like John's, and his never fails. I'm glad you got the cable, Mom. I wondered if you'd get it on time. I owe Grandma a letter, but I don't know where to send it. Oh, the hut's gone crazy. Here's the following gab. Who's on third? What's on first? Wise pitching. He's catching. Did you ever look through a keyhole and see an eye? To the shelters, men! The bombs are coming! I ain't crazy, am I? Take that gas mask off. Bang! Now Bob's shooting at me with a cigar. Now Jimmy is threatening Bob with a red-hot poker. John is imitating Hitler. Bob and John are now howling like wolves. Now John's petting and talking to an imaginary dog. Jimmy just snapped at me. Bob's counting his toes. This little piggy went to market, etc. Now Bob's saying I got a nail in every toe, no wonder I can't walk. And on through the night. Through all this, Sam is trying to write, and 4 others somehow are managing to sleep. Well, enough of that. I had a nice turkey dinner. Donald missed out, I guess, like some did here. Me being a chowhound, I made out all right. That book hasn't arrived yet, but I'm keeping my eyes open for it, Mom. Have you definitely decided to go to Newark for Christmas? Still, it'd be good for you all to get together again. I just said to Johnny, Mom says hello to Johnny, and he answered half as long. Hello, Mom. Well, that answers the 2 letters, and I'm tired and having a heck of a time writing this, as you can well imagine. Take good care of yourselves. All my love, Richard. One day later, on December 5th, Donald left Grafton Underwood on his second mission, this time flying aboard a different B-17G. Their target was a German Luftwaffe fighter base located in Saint-Jean-d'Angely, France. Along the way they were harassed by enemy fighters, and at times black puffs of flak hung heavy about them. But once the bomber formation was 70 miles from their target, thick clouds settled in, blocking the German airfield from view. Once again the mission was aborted, but Donald and the rest of his crew still received credit for one combat mission. A few days later, he wrote home to his parents. December 8th, 1943. Dear Mom and Dad, today I received a letter from you and a email from Dad. So far your mail's coming funny. First for a long time no mail, then all at once a batch of it, and it's still addressed to my old squadron and group address. But I suppose that was old mail just catching up with me. I expect the next letter I get will be addressed directly to me at this address. It takes so long for mail to get here, and I get about 5 letters till I get one answering one I wrote. I'm glad to hear the furnace and house is all fixed up almost, and I expect it's going to be cold this winter. Speaking of cold, how'd you like to fly high altitude with me? It gets about anywhere from 30 to 50 below. Does that make you shiver? I receive letters from Richard every once in a while, and I write to him often. The next pass I get, I'll be up to see him, and if I can get a picture of the two of us, it'll be great, and I'll send you one as soon as possible. I don't know whether I told you or not, but I have one mission to my credit, so keep check on him. After 25, I'll be home. It's plenty rough riding a plane through flak and fighters, and then I think to myself as I'm trying to get a bead on an enemy fighter if those back home complaining, especially those 4 river workers. I'd like to see them up with me once and then see if they complain anymore. I wasn't scared or nervous at all when we made through the flak and saw the enemy fighters diving down on us. I guess I was more or less held in suspense. It's funny how you act under such conditions. Everything has to be timed just like clockwork, for you know you're playing for keeps. We sure appreciate fighter cover, for they really keep those fighters away, so it's not too bad as long as those P-47s are around us. B-24s are good too. That's the joke we all pull, for they pick on them before they touch us. The crew's still together and we're all fine. Hope you have a box of candy on the way. If not, could you send me some? That's a prized possession around here. Boy, but I'd love to get a package every week. But I suppose that's expecting a little too much. But if every now and then you could send me some candy or something, I'd love it. Dad said he had the grip. Make him stay in bed till he gets over it. Have you received any money from me on the government yet? Use what you want of it and put some away for me. I don't care how much. Whatever you do is okay with me. There's one thing I'd like if you can get. It's a hat. Overseas hat, and it's not khaki in color, it's dark blue or black with Air Corps braid around it. It's like a khaki hat, only it's dark blue. I have to answer quite a few letters, so I'll sign off, over. That's Air Corps slang, like one person says something and says over, which means he wants an answer, and when he gets the answer he says Roger. Love, Don. For their third mission, on December 11th, Don's crew was assigned to a B-17G called Billy Dell, and they flew in the high group of the 41st Combat Wing. Their target was the port of Emden, Germany, and they easily spotted it through the light clouds and ineffective smokescreen. Fourth mission on December 16th targeted the port of Bremen. Don and his crew were assigned to B-17G Lazy Daisy, and they flew in the low group this time, only encountering moderate flak before dropping their bombs and heading for home. Shortly after this mission, Sergeant Donald Lee was given a few days' leave, and he quickly set off to visit his brother. Dear Mom and Dad, I received your Thanksgiving package today and a letter from you Monday. The book sounds good. I shall delve into its depths tomorrow as it's too late today. What alliteration. Or is it illiterate? That was a mighty nice card you enclosed too. The smokes will be handy in that form. I won't have to get any for a few weeks now. Did I tell you about Don? In case I didn't, one night I retired to the arms of Morpheus at 10:30 p.m., with the anticipation of rising for duty at 6 a.m. At 12 midnight I thought we had an air raid as I was shaken almost out of bed and onto the floor. Upon opening my eyes I saw a face leering down, with a grin from ear to ear. I then closed my eyes and looked again. Sure enough, it was Slap in the flesh and blood. He started the speaking with, "Have you got a bunk for me?" There I was stuck as everyone was restricted and there was no empty bunks available. They took him back to the orderly room while I got dressed. In the meantime they gave him the charge of quarters bed, as he slept in the orderly room while on duty. I woke him up at 6 and we went to breakfast. Then I left for work. He hung around, read and wrote letters, looked through my junk. I came home when we went to dinner, and he accompanied me to work in the afternoon. My engineering officer, Lieutenant Austin, gave me special permission to leave several hours early so I could go to town with him and see him to his train, as he had to leave at 7 p.m. We came back to get a pass from my orderly room, and they refused the permission regardless to any reason. Nice of them, eh? They said it was because of a lecture everyone had to attend, which I ordinarily wouldn't have been able to do because of my working hours. The lecture was at 7 p.m., and I was to get through work at 7 p.m., and I had to get supper after that. We palled around camp until he had to go. He looked through my album, and thought quite a bit of it. I hope he'll get another chance to come here, as I won't for quite some time. So Mrs. Kelly is a corporal now, eh? I could pull my rank on her, huh? She's a typical whack non-com, if you know what I mean. I'm waiting very, very impatiently for your fudge, Dad. Take good care of yourselves. All my love, Richard. Corporal Donald Lee and his crew were briefed for their 12th mission in the early morning hours of February 11, 1944. The target was a propeller factory in Frankfurt, Germany, and they were assigned to a B-17G called Salvage Queen II. They encountered heavy flak as they approached the target. Donald was manning the right side waist gun when a close burst sent shrapnel into his body. The top turret gunner, Staff Sergeant James P. Traynor, witnessed this and mentioned it over the intercom. Second Lieutenant Weiss, the co-pilot, asked Donald if he was all right, and he replied with a simple yes. Once they reached Frankfurt, the flak was intense, and their oxygen system took a hit. But despite all this, Salvage Queen II managed to drop her bombs over the target. Their oxygen system was failing, however, and the pilot, Lieutenant Moore, had no choice but to leave the formation roughly an hour after dropping their bombs. Salvage Queen II turned towards a group of bombers below, disappearing among scattered clouds in search of a more oxygen-rich altitude. The plane eventually leveled off at 10 to 12,000 feet, which left us all by ourselves, recalled Donald's fellow waist gunner, Staff Sergeant Richard Wells. Not long after this, Donald collapsed at his gun position, apparently suffering from a lack of oxygen and his shrapnel wounds. Ball turret gunner Jack Brown was tending to shrapnel wounds in his left leg and arm nearby, and he rushed to Donald's side, along with radio operator Noah Puckett. They found him unconscious, the oxygen mask frozen to his face. Jack pried it off, and Noah tried to revive him with artificial respiration. But Donald never regained consciousness, and neither Noah or Jack could find a pulse. Staff Sergeant Richard Wells was now the only waist gunner left, and things were about to get much worse. We were attacked by 3 enemy aircraft, wrote Wells. 2 FW-190s and 1 Me-109. I shot down the Me-109, but the 2 FWs managed to pump us full of shots. The wings crumpled and the aircraft was one massive flame. Engines 1 and 4 had caught fire, and it quickly spread to the bomb bay. Second Lieutenant Moore ordered his crew to prepare for a crash landing, and they gathered in the radio compartment while Salvage Queen II continued its fiery descent. Co-pilot Weiss asked over the radio what Donald's condition was. He was reported to still be out, and that he had the appearance of being blue. As the plane was burning badly, it was decided that it was foolish to attempt to remove him. At 2:30 p.m., Salvage Queen II belly landed in a field near Valenciennes, France, and skidded to a stop, trailing flames. The crew rushed from their burning plane, leaving Donald where he had fallen in the waist section. They barely made it to the tree line before Salvage Queen II exploded. 4 of the crew evaded capture with help from the French underground. 5 spent the rest of the war as POWs, and Corporal Donald Robert Lee was laid to rest in the Saint Roch Cemetery near Valenciennes. Richard mourned the loss of his brother, and spent the rest of the war with the mighty 8th. He fell in love with a local girl, Maud Ella Meredith, and they were married in Manchester, England on July 24, 1945. Richard and Maud returned to Massachusetts soon after and settled in Hingham, where they raised 2 children. Richard went on to found several transportation companies, and devoted his free time to performing as a clown for sick children and nursing home residents. He was Director Emeritus and Vice President of the American Resources Foundation, a non-profit that provided equipment and supplies to foreign hospitals in need and many other civic groups. Richard Lee was a selfless man who seemed to be constantly engaged with his community. He lived a life that would have made his brother proud, and he passed away on July 28, 2001. at the age of 79.